Welcome to Radio Influencers. I'm joined by Roger Rafson with Gen Media Partners. How you doing, Roger?
Hello, I'm happy to be with you today, Andy. Hello.
Good, good. Now, I wanted to have you on because, of course, we're in an election year, and so
Mhm.
everyone wants to know how to get their hands on some of those sweet political ad dollars. But before we get too far into that, can you tell them a little bit of your radio origin story?
Well, I am a radio guy since age 11. Originally, I
11.
want
Woo!
11. Yeah, that's young. I wanted to be Walter Cronkite, and my dad said, there's a lot of people who would want that job, and why don't you get some experience? And that there's a radio station down the street, so see what you can do for them. And so, at a young age, I was the studio engineer for high school football games on WEEF, AM and FM in Highland Park, Illinois. And then when my voice changed, they let me go on the air, and then I was a disc jockey. And
It's
I was
always a
so
big
into it.
day, isn't it? When
Yeah,
your
it was
voice
great.
changes
Yeah.
and they're ready to put you behind a mic.
Yep. But I only lived 3 blocks from the station, so they had me sign the stations on Saturday and Sunday morning so that their full time employee could sleep in. I don't think that would fly today, but we did it
How
then.
did you transition from into sales?
Well, quickly I saw that the people who were doing better at the station were the people involved in sales and management. So I switched my sights from journalism to sales, and I've been doing that ever since.
Yeah, it's a cruel way to put it. I should not put it this way, but I used to say the when people go, "Why did you get into management instead of just staying on the air?" And I'm like, "Well, I wanted to be the guy firing people rather than the guy getting fired." But that's a rude way to put it.
Ouch.
In truth, I to be honest with you, I hated anytime I ever had to fire somebody. That was like the worst week of my. Even if it was something fully deserved, like they totally screwed up, and you'd warned them. Man, I did not sleep the night before, 2 nights. It's rough. So I probably should not continue joking about that.
Mhm.
What's the difference between a political ad and a issue advocacy ad?
Okay, so now we're getting into political basics. I call this political 101. And you ask a very good question. Of course, a political candidate is somebody who's running for office. An issue is an advertiser who is very politically involved, but they're not running for office. If you go to the voting booth, you can't pull the lever for the National Rifle Association or the
So
Republican
so
Governors Association.
a super PAC would fall under that, right?
Those are issues. And the big difference from the sales perspective is that the candidates enjoy a wonderful benefit of getting the lowest unit rate in the political windows leading up to the elections. The issues don't enjoy such a benefit. They pay regular spot rates or sometimes higher based on stations' inventory.
Am I correct to assume that because of the campaign finance laws and Citizens United, that more money flows to radio on the issue advocacy side?
The political team at Gen Media Partners once thought about that, and we estimate that 2/3 of our political business is from issues. Um, But regarding Citizens United, I'd say that that's a true statement, that there are more dollars flowing because of the Citizens United Supreme Court decision, which gives corporations the right of free speech.
Right.
Um, and so, yes, more dollars have flowed to radio, but also TV and digital and all other media.
What is the rule on when radio stations have to offer that specific rate to candidates?
The lowest unit charge happens during the political windows, which before a primary is 45 days before the primary, and before the general election in November, it's 60 days.
Days before the general election. Oh, that's really good to know. I get asked that a lot, and I always have to look it up before I
Me
can
too. I get that question a lot too.
before I can advise somebody on that. I know this is something that's been debated a lot over the years, and everyone has an opinion on it. But do any equal time rules apply still?
Sure. If you allow a candidate for an office to be on your air advertising, then you have to allow their competitors to be on your air too. Equal access. It's as simple as
So
that.
so yeah, so it's basically either allow all of them or none of them,
That's correct.
because you do have the
And
right to
there
turn
is
it
an
down.
exception to that. One exception is for candidates for federal office, which is U.S. President, U.S. Senate, and U.S. Congress, the House. You have to accept federal candidates, but you don't have to accept mayor or state senate races or
But on the
the
federal level,
down
you have.
ballot candidates. You don't have to take, and you also don't have to take issues and PACs.
Yeah, and you explained it on a webinar that I saw really well, talking about one of the reasons why that's the case is because we're all licensed from the FCC, and there's some strings that comes attached to that. Is that the
Yeah,
best way to put it?
yeah, yes, that's very true. Generally speaking, the FCC, who is has oversight over the spectrum, they issue licenses to broadcasters like the person who owns your radio station. And with that comes some strings attached. And one of them is that you have to offer candidates the lowest unit charge during the political windows.
And yeah, and that's basically as simple as it sounds. If you look across um, your rate card, it's not necessarily your published rate card rate. It's your actual, like if you're doing a bundled deal for a big advertiser, it's your actual lowest rate. Is that right?
I know. So some fast food retailer or a furniture store or a car dealer, a 52-week a year advertiser with a heavy schedule, of course they get a low rate. And that lowest unit rate is what you offer to a candidate for public office who's only going to use your station for a few weeks or a month or two before the election. It is not fair, but that's what we have to live with.
Well, and that's why, outsiders looking in, somebody might say, why would any radio station in their right mind ever turn down a single political ad dollar? And that's probably why, if they're doing incredibly well and they're at peak capacity and they have very little leftover inventory, that might be the one reason somebody might turn it down, right?
Yeah, that tends to happen in the major markets. That's true.
Um,
Andy, we have another major requirement aside from lowest unit charge
mhm,
that stations have to fulfill, and that is the public file. That's an important
right.
requirement. Every station has to have a public file for many, many years. It was at the front desk of your radio station, and now it's online at the FCC's website. I'll send you the link, Andy, so you can post it on this video. But that's a very important requirement.
Well, and so I've actually been present. Now, this is back in the day when we had to have them on. They didn't have the web-based version, but I've actually been present at a radio station with an FCC inspector came in, and we did get a fine because it wasn't political that was missing, but basically one of the big things when they check that file is if you have neglected to update it, that's when you're going to get dinged. And
Mhm.
you would not believe how many stations I see that it's been years since they've updated things like quarterly issues and concerns or political, and that's you will get popped for that. Believe me.
Let's take the FCC public file requirement and make it a positive, Andy.
Yeah.
Fact of the matter is that every radio station, TV station, cable system, they all have public files, and they post their political ad campaigns up on there, and you can use that to your advantage. For instance, if you see a candidate advertising on a TV station that you happen to watch, you can look at their FCC public file and you can get the information about who's buying that candidate's ad campaign, and you can reach out to them. The other thing that you can do, which is a help, is you can see the uh, ad schedules on your competing radio stations. And right there on your computer is the rate that they're charging. And if you know their audience, their average quarter hour, or their rating points in the measured markets, of course, you take their rate that you see on the computer, you know their audience, and you can figure out their cost per point or their cost per thousand. And
Yeah,
if
their
that number
CPM.
is higher than what you're charging, well, that gives you some room to increase your rate and still be competitive. So that's an
It also
example of how
also gives
using
you
the public file can really help you.
it also gives you an effective way to sell against them because you can
Absolutely.
say, well, our cars, but that our CPM is lower than theirs.
Hmm. Yep.
The other positive thing about a public files, it does get us thinking about the issues that matter to our community and how we can address them, and it kind of forces you to do that because every quarter you have to fill out that report and put it in there. So it's good from that standpoint too.
Yep. It's nice and transparent. Everybody can see it.
Compared to the last couple election cycles, will this be a good election cycle for political and issue ad dollars? You think?
Oh yeah, no doubt. Of course, it's a presidential election cycle, and that's always good for the presidential race, and not only for those candidates, but also for the issues and PACs that support them or bash them.
Yeah.
So there's all that. But of course, there are always the gubernatorial races and the U.S. Senate races. Yeah, this is an even number of years, so this is an important election cycle, and everything that we're reading in the trades is that there's going to be, you know, billions of dollars spent on it. So radio will get some of that, and that's good for the stations.
The big thing that stood out to me is the increase from last one. The last election cycle seemed significant. Um, but
That's true,
yeah,
and
we
we
can.
have the Citizens United case to thank for that.
Yep. What
It's
are
the
some
one
things?
thing that all the Democratic ad agencies and the Republican ad agencies, they all agree that the Citizens United was really great for their industry.
Yeah, I mean because that's like you said, 2/3 of the money is coming from that side, so it would be significantly less if Citizens United was overturned, which is always a possibility down the road. What are some things radio stations can do to put themselves in a better position to get their share of those ad dollars?
Well, we love competitive spending as a sales tool. If you're getting a campaign or a pack on your air for all offices, every single office, you need to let the decision makers at the political ad agencies know about it. Because if they have a client who's involved in that race, they will be very interested in advertising on your station so that your audience isn't exposed exclusively to their competitor's message.
Right.
You follow that?
Hmm.
So if you're getting one order, the other side will want to match that and reach your audience as well. And so one order becomes two orders, and maybe with a pack, it becomes three or four orders. It's a wonderful sales tool, and we do it all the time.
Well, it's kind of reminds me of the quickest way to get the Chevy dealer on in your town is to sell the Ford dealer and then go tell the Chevy dealer. So it's kind of similar to that, but
It's
I've
the
never
same.
thought of it
It's
that way.
very similar to that. However, the difference is that with private businesses, their marketing information is really sort of proprietary. So you can't put it up on the public file. But with political and issue advertising, it's very public. The FCC requires you to post it. So then you can talk about it and you can spread the information around that one campaign is on your air. So the other one ought to be also. The
Yeah, so
other, go ahead.
that saves, how we always used to listen to the competitor, or now we can do that. We don't have to do it manually, but to write down what they were who was advertising, that saves you from having to do that on the political side.
Yeah, and one of the things that we do at the rep firm is we are active participants in competitive spending. We have a list of the political decision makers at the ad agencies, and we let each of them know about it literally the same day that we get the orders, so that they can respond quickly.
Yeah.
Now, you asked for other ideas that what can stations do to make more money with political. I always recommend that they spend a half an hour with their coverage map, that circle of where your signal reaches, and look at all of the municipalities in your coverage area, all of the state senate districts, all of the state house districts in your coverage area, and write down all of the races that are happening. Every municipality might have a mayoral race or a county executive or a county commissioner, city council members, like I said, state house, state senate, and then take all those races that are within your coverage area, and then go to your state's Secretary of State website, and they list all of the candidates for each of those races, and that's a lead list. There
Yeah.
you go. Then you can reach out to all these people, and they might be very flattered to know that your station uh, is reaching out to their campaign and trying to help them to get elected. So
Well, that kind of
you can make some
that
money
kind
that way.
of that kind of leads me to another thought, D- and maybe this is the way you recommended it. It's a better way to do it. Does it help to get proactive at the local level and actually attend these events, approach candidates directly, or is that a waste of time and they should just uh, do it the way you suggested?
Well, I think it's always good to network, and yes, going to political events, shaking hands with you, giving your business card is a good idea. Get their business card and put them on your station's email blast list. Good idea. Um, and a lot of state broadcast associations organize trips to visit the congresspeople and the senators in Washington. I would go on that trip, and
Yeah.
and when they visit your representative or your senator, be sure to thank them for advertising. Give them a T-shirt. Why not? You know? But let them know that you're very active in their community with good talk programming or other public affairs shows, and they'll remember that. And
And at the
when
state
it comes time
level,
to advertise, they will give you a call.
yeah, and at the state level, you could do the same thing. Even if your state broadcast convention doesn't put something together, they probably have something similar to that that you could attend that would put you in front of those people. And if not, they could certainly help you make
Absolutely.
those connections. That's why I always tell people go to your state conventions too. We all go to the national broadcast conventions, but man, definitely you definitely want to go to the state ones as well in your
And when
state
you go to
because
those state broadcasters associations, of course, go to the panel discussions, do all that, but also have a beverage with your fellow broadcasters in the lounge. That to me is the best networking. And when you get good ideas about what their best practices are that you can take back to your station and implement as well.
I'm 1,000% with you on that. I always tell people the best networking is the whatever hotel it's at, go to that bar. That's the best networking you can do because and people loosen up and they tell you the truth as opposed to the ungarnished truth as opposed to kind of filtering it like they do when they're sitting on a panel.
Yep.
Um, any upcoming laws you're aware of that could affect either political or issue advocacy ad spending on radio?
I am aware of some of them. Of course, I'm not a communications attorney, so don't look to me for that. But I am aware that several states are enacting legislation making it illegal to use artificial intelligence to come up with voices or images, and that's new and on the legislature's agenda. Um, there generally it's always a good idea to be vigilant about what PACs and issue advocacy groups say on their commercial, and it is 100% okay to ask for substantiation about all of the claims that they make in their ad, because it's true ultimately the licensee is responsible for for untruthful content that goes out over your air. So you can be a little bit proactive by getting the substantiation, which the ad agencies are happy to give you, and posting that in your public file along with that order. It's always a good idea.
Well, and you mentioned AI. I mean, that's certainly going to be a hot topic this election year because we're going to see, we're going to be, we've already seen AI voiced ads. We've seen some on the video side used as well. But I mean, that's going to, that's definitely going to be something to watch for and how that, if it gets away from us, that could, a law could come in the middle of the, I know that's rare, but uh,
And what we're hearing is that unscrupulous issues or PACs might do that and air those commercials in October when it's too late to do anything about it by the time you appeal it and the election's over. Yeah, it's going to be something to see.
Well, because it's kind of like, I mean, the thing that has been happening for the past several elections is they've been using social media and fake accounts on social media that look like real accounts, and now that's taken to the next level where you can actually pretend like you're a trusted person in an ad, and it's not actually that person delivered. Like you started out talking about wanting to be Walter Cronkite. I mean, somebody could pretend to be a reputable news person saying something, and that would go like wildfire, and before it was pulled down. So, I mean, it's going to be an interesting election cycle when it comes to advertising for sure.
Yep.
Is there? I know we kind of think of political ad dollars really come to mind every 2 to 4 years, but is there money to be made in the off years?
Oh, absolutely. Uh, Often there are pieces of legislation that come up before U.S. Congress and, of course, at the State House as well. And there are issue advocacy groups who have opinions about the legislation that's before the legislature, and they want your audience to call your representative and express your pleasure or displeasure with that piece of legislation. Absolutely. We do a lot of business in between election cycles.
Well, because like you said, the issue stuff doesn't go away, and that can happen at any time. So there's that money out there, and we probably just aren't as aware of it as we should be at the local level in radio.
Another example of a politician who uses radio very well is is in the Alabama Fourth Congressional District. The representative there uh, sponsors local high school football during election cycle years, but also in between, during the odd number years when he's not running for reelection. He just wants to keep his name out in front of the community that he's locally involved. And he puts that 30-second commercial in every football game all over his congressional district. That's what we do at the rep firm. We put it together for him, but it's a very effective uh, way for a politician to communicate with the constituents.
Well,
And
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 that's
the other thing about the football season, the high school football season, that's so perfect, is that the entire regular season for high school football ends the weekend before the election. How perfect is that? I just
well,
love it.
and that's a really good point for two reasons. One, there's a lot of other. I mean, you could take that example and take it to other politicians and say has worked really well for other politicians in other districts, and we think this would work well for you, and to try to get that revenue a little more steadily. And secondly, like you said, that's outside of the window, so you
Oh yeah,
don't have to offer them the lowest rate.
very true.
Although the challenge with rate always is when they get accustomed to. That's why whenever I'm working with someone that's starting a station, I always caution them on the dollar a holler or the $5 a holler type, because you can never get that. It's not never, but it's very hard to get that rate up. So is that sometimes a challenge in political when you hit them outside of the windows and they're used to paying that cheap rate?
No, they understand it, but sometimes it is a little bit embarrassing when there's a big drop when the window opens. The rate drops a lot, and the buyers, you know, raise their eyebrows over that. But
Yeah.
that's but again, they're enjoying the lowest unit charge and not having to buy an annual contract. So that's why somebody got a low rate.
So for somebody who's running a station or a sales manager, and this just is not their wheelhouse, and they don't have a background in it, how can they reach out to you guys to help, and what kind of help can you guys give them on this?
Well, we do have a website called campaignrates.com, and there's a tab called political resources and tools. We have a lot of good information up there. Your state broadcasters association is a good place to go. The NAB is good. The RAB has a lot of good information. But you can always reach out to me personally. I'm happy to answer your questions. And of course, you could always call your communications attorney, but they charge you for it.
Yeah, yeah, that can get expensive really quickly. Those billable hours where you're like, was that an email? What was I don't remember talking to you that day, but oh well.
Yeah.
Well, you answered a lot of my questions, and this is not an area that I'm an expert in by any means. So I appreciate you coming on and kind of sharing some of your knowledge with this. Anything else that you wanted to hit that I kind of missed?
Well, yes, there are a lot of dollars to be made, uh, and it's always a good standard practice to get cash in advance. And now with ACH and credit card payments, we can get the payment to you electronically. We love ACH. It's just in your station's checking account and it's liquid, it's ready to go. All we ask in return is that after the schedule runs at the end of the month, please send us your invoice and affidavit showing that the spots ran, because we have a responsibility to reconcile
Sure.
each campaign. And it's always the one station that slows everything up. So we ask for everybody's cooperation. Please send us your invoices and affidavits promptly.
And I'm guessing on the local side, don't wait till after the election to try to collect that
Oh,
that revenue.
no, don't do
That's like
that.
that's like getting your money from a club or a bar after the event's already taken place. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Good luck.
You do that once.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you, Roger. Thanks for coming on and sharing the knowledge with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy. It's a pleasure talking to you. Good luck.
Radio Influencers is a radio update production. New episodes are released on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern.